Hello and welcome to this lab. In the previous lab, you learned how to change the behavior of a container by passing arguments to it. In this lab, you will create a multi-container Docker application and learn about Docker networks. Reminder, please do the labs in sequence as they build on top of each other. Let's get started. This application has two containers. A back-end container which is written in Flask and a front-end container written in PHP. In order for the front-end container to access the back-end container, they both need to belong to the same Docker network. We will see how to do this in this lab. You can find a reference to Docker network under the resources attached to this lab. Also, there is a PDF file with the full list of commands you will run in this lab. Please download this PDF now and keep it handy, as in this lab you will be typing a couple of long commands. Change directory to the front-end application at Fibonacci sample/Fibonacci front-end. There is a directory named PHP which includes the front-end application code written in PHP. The code is simple. Browse through it to take an idea. For now, I will point out two aspects that we need to be aware of when constructing the Docker end-to-end application. The login.php script authenticates the user that attempts to log into the application. It does so by comparing the passphrase that the user typed to the value stored in the passphrase environment variable. Check lines 5 to 12. We will pass the value of the environment variable passphrase as an input to the container. The invoke.php script invokes the backend Fibonacci REST API. Please pay attention to line 5 where it expects the backend's endpoint at this URL. We will configure Docker in a way to make the backend available at this endpoint. To allow the front end to access the backend at the given endpoint, we need to have both the front end and the backend containers in the same Docker network. Create the Docker network using the following command. Run the following command to create the backend container under the Fibonacci net network. Let's go through the contents of the command. Mount a volume to a host directory. Specify the name of the network where this container will be created. Specify a name for the container. This is because containers under the same network can refer to each other by name. Hence, the front-end container can reach the back-end container at the endpoint it expects. Expose the container at port 30059 on the host. Please replace this with your Docker username. Set application version to v4.0 and enable logging. Let's now test the container at host port 30059. Launch this link from a browser on your Docker host to figure the Fibonacci of 28. It works. Note that the version is coming as v4.0 as expected. If you inspect the log file on the host machine, you will find a new log entry too. Let's create the front-end container under the Docker network. For now, we will reuse a publicly available PHP container image, the PHP 7.0 Apache, for the front end. How will it have our code though? We will have the container mount the source folder to a directory on the host machine that contains the PHP source code. Make note of the PHP directory on your machine. You will use it in the next command. Run the following command to create the front-end container under the Fibonacci net network. Let's go through the contents of this command. Mount a volume for the front-end container that is pointing to the PHP source code on the host machine. We also set the container path where the PHP Apache image expects to have the web resources. Specify the name of the network where this container will be created. Expose the container at host port 30080. Set a value for the passphrase environment variable. The end user will need to input this value to log into the application. I know this is not a secure or flexible way to set a passphrase. We do it like this for illustration purposes only. We will use a more secure way to set the passphrase later in this course in the Kubernetes section. Specify the container image. Note that Docker did not find the PHP image locally, so it is downloading it from Docker Hub. Test the Fibonacci application front end on the host machine using this URL. Enter the passphrase and login. Let's figure the Fibonacci of something big. Enter 100 and click Go. The front end styles the output that came from the back end a bit by coloring it in blue using CSS. Let's change the color to green. Edit the Fibonacci.php page under the PHP directory on the host. Change the style at line 15 so that the color becomes green. Save your changes. Refresh the front-end page, then try the Fibonacci of 100 again. This time the results come in green. That's it for this lab. You have learned about Docker Network, created a multi-container Docker application, and changed the front-end PHP code and saw changes reflect immediately at development time. Head over to the next lab where you will containerize the front-end application along with its PHP source code into its own container image.